see me.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. Okay.
Very good. All right. Well, we are live. For folks that are watching on the internet, welcome to another CET panel conversation. I'm John Giger. I'm the director of the Center for Ed Tech here at DePaul, and I'm just here to say hello and thank you all for tuning in. I'd also like to thank our guests for joining us, and we'll go through introductions in just a moment, but first I will introduce James Valles, our graduate assistant, and he will be moderating the panel discussion this evening, and we'll have a good time.
All right.
So, all right, James, all you.
All right, thank you, John. And welcome to our 1-hour presentation here, our panel discussion, Digital Citizenship, where it's our goal by the end, we will hope that you guys will have the tools and resources so that we can all do better. During the next hour, we're going to take a closer look at issues surrounding digital citizenship and the roles we play as educators, parents, and students. Again, I'm James Valles. I'm a computer science graduate student here at DePaul University and a graduate assistant for the CET. I'm going to help moderate tonight's discussion, which is being held inside the CET lab and streamed online. And we've invited 3 digital citizenship experts to help us understand what is digital citizenship, why is it important, and we'll discuss other topics such as cyberbullying. We've all heard about that one. Online etiquette, how your digital footprint can impact you, harmful content, and how we can do better. The role we play as educators, parents, and students. And obviously this is such a huge topic that we could easily go on for more than an hour. And we really want this to be an informal discussion where those of you here and online can jump in and ask questions, so please feel free. So without further ado, let's get started by introducing and thanking our panelists. We have Matthew Soeth. He's the co-founder and executive director of the national nonprofit I Can Help, a national campaign to train students, educators, and parents in safe online behavior and positive digital citizenship skills. And he's joining us from California tonight. Hello, Matthew.
Hey, how are we doing?
Good. And we also have Dr. Mike Ribble. He's the director of technology for the Manhattan-Ogden Public Schools in Manhattan, Kansas. He's also been working on the topic of digital citizenship for more than a decade, and he's an author who has written the book Digital Citizenship in Schools, 2nd edition. Also, welcome, Dr. Ribble. And where are you at?
Thank you. I'm in Manhattan, Kansas, and just excited to be here and talk about this topic. It's been a long time. It's been now almost 15 years talking about digital citizenship. So this is a great discussion, a great time.
Absolutely, great to have you. And also joining us is Jan Garbett. She's the founder of EPIK Deliberate Digital, which has been a powerful organization at the forefront of the movement for youth to use technology for good. And she was also a candidate for Utah's 2nd Congressional District in the U.S. House. Welcome, Ms. Garbett.
Thank you.
And where are you at? In Utah?
I am. I'm in Salt Lake City.
Oh, beautiful. What's the weather out there?
Well, it is so pretty right now. Pretty autumn leaves outside. Pleasant day. You caught me on a good one.
Awesome. Good to have you. We're here in the windy city of Chicago. Thank you guys all so much for joining us here tonight. So let's go ahead and start with a question for all of you. If you can tell us about your background and what got you involved in digital citizenship. Let's start with you, Matthew.
Yeah, for me, it was just, I was the new teacher on campus who just happened to be good with technology. And it's one of those where the principal is like, hey, you know how to do that stuff, you should do more of this. I'd say that a lot of it kind of came in more looking at early days. We were talking 10, 15 years ago at that, where it's just a lot of the tech training was more about here's how you do email, and here's how you remember your password, and here's how to use the printer. And really it wasn't like, all right, we should be able to do more with this. And so really trying to push not only the boundaries of what I was doing in teaching, what I could get my students to do, what kind of creative tools we could get them to put together, and sort of make that happen. It wasn't until about, I'd say around 2011 or so, when we started to really see that it was more than just what we can create, but really working with students on how to manage and respond to negative content online as well, and really empowering them, and when they see certain things, respond to certain things, to see what they can make happen there. So it was just very kind of, this is what the times demand, this is what my students need. It's definitely something I had an interest in, and it just kind of drove itself from there.
Awesome. Good story. And Dr. Ribble, your story.
Well, it really began in about 2002 when I was working with Dr. Gerald Bailey out of Kansas State University, and he was doing a graduate seminar and talking about this idea, this concept of digital citizenship, and that was the first time I'd actually heard the term used. And so I went to Dr. Bailey after he was my major professor and said, what did you mean by that? And what did you? And they said, well, it's more conceptual, but we needed somebody to really start putting some ideas together. And so that's where I set off my doctoral work in digital citizenship, and wrote the first edition of Digital Citizenship in Schools for ISTE, and followed that up with a parent book on digital citizenship, raising a digital child. And just here this summer, I did a co-author with a gentleman out of Kentucky, Dr. Marty Park. He's the CIO for the state of Kentucky. He and I just wrote the book, Digital Citizenship for Leaders. It's a brand new ISTE publication. We've had really, really good feedback on it, and it encompasses a lot of my early work, but it really takes us to the next level of how can we implement it into our schools. Really excited to talk about that throughout this discussion.
Excellent, Dr. Ribble. And then Jan, I know that you're the founder of this powerful organization that really is helping youths learn how to use technology for good. So tell us about your story and how you got started and starting that whole organization up.
So many of you probably heard of the contextual idea that my generation are digital immigrants and my children, which some of you would be, digital natives. Well, I've had the privilege of crossing that ocean myself, where in the old world we didn't have these tools. And there were no digital citizens. We were just all citizens of our countries or our communities. And then through time, it came to us. We didn't even have to go anywhere. And I crossed a bridge. And like most adults, when they first begin to cross that bridge, there is fear. And when I was asked to give some input for some legislation in Utah, I said, if we continue just to approach technology from a place of trying to manage that technology for our kids and just only focusing on the harms or the risks inherent in this, we're not going to help them. And that bill, that legislation that you draft is going to die a death with many other bills that are buried in the coffers of our Senate halls. So I said, let's put in the word digital citizenship. And that has been an important journey for us. So we have gone from channeling our energy away from managing technology into empowering and engaging young people themselves.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys all so much for that. Before we get started, let's go ahead and take our first question here. We're going to go ahead and talk about what is digital citizenship and why should we care. But before the experts jump in to answer that question, we've compiled a list of statistics from a number of different sources, including Pew Institute, the National Crime Prevention Center, Common Sense Media, the FBI, and other sources. And did you know that 21% of kids K through second grade have access to cell phones? We're talking 21%. Home internet usage rises with increasing age. Around 41% of children ages 3 to 5 use the internet at home. We're talking about children's ages 3 to 5. That's incredible. Approximately 34% of students report experiencing cyberbullying during their lifetime. Over 60% of students who experienced cyberbullying reported that it immensely impacted their ability to learn and feel safe while at school. 59% of US teens have been bullied or harassed online, and over 90% believe it's a major problem for their age. Students who experience bullying or cyberbullying are nearly two times more likely to attempt suicide. And 90% of children ages 8 to 16 years old have seen online pornography. An estimated 725,000 children have been aggressively asked for sex online, defined as an offer to meet in person. And babies and young children are accessing and viewing media in new ways now that the majority of American families have mobile and internet-connected devices at home. To the experts, these stats are all very alarming. I wanted to bring them up because digital citizenship is all about addressing them. And these issues won't go away, but how can we do better? To be honest with you, when I was first working on this panel, I heard the term digital citizenship, but I wasn't really sure what it meant. So in your definition, what is digital citizenship and why should each of us care? Let's go ahead and start with Matthew.
Oh, I was going to push the mic. You wrote a book.
Okay. Well, let's go with Dr. Ribble.
Well, we brought in a lot of those same pieces that you talked about, common sense media. We looked at all of those different topics, and even I worked for a time with the Digital Citizenship Institute, and we even put out surveys looking for what is this topic, what is it about, and what I kept coming back to is we're creating these new norms of how we are using technology appropriately and responsibly. But even in this last book, what we've also seen is this new empowerment of students of how they're using the technology and what they can do with it. And so once we see that they have an understanding and know what the ground rules are and how to use it together, it can be so powerful of what it can do. So we are building these, and when we talk about digital citizenship, Jan mentioned it. We had just citizenship, and now we've got this digital piece. And a lot of people say, well, let's just drop the digital. Let's just drop that off. I think we still need to have that in there so that we know what we're talking about and what pieces go with that and how that fits together. And I think that that's important for us to make sure that we see all these different pieces. And as we pull them together, I defined mine in also the elements of digital citizenship and how we broke that down. So it has so many moving pieces. It's important to help our students, but also our parents and our communities to understand all of these different aspects.
And so why should each of us care, who's watching at home?
Why should they care?
Yeah, why should they care to know about this
all
stuff?
the statistics you just gave. I mean, all of the access and Common Sense Media talked about, and this was years ago, about over 50% of kids that were pre-school, into our educational system had access to technology already. So they were coming to our schools. They're coming to us already immersed in this digital world. So, when I started, I felt like, maybe after about 5 or 6 years, we'd kind of get to a sort of a plateau, and every time I look at it, it's one more thing, and it keeps building on itself. So it's constantly changing, it evolving.
Matthew, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think adding to that, a really big part of it is, the sort of the evolution in digital citizenship has been more than just being a citizen, right? One of the things that we're seeing, particularly with younger generations, even millennials on down, myself included, it's really there's the online and offline doesn't really exist anymore. There's just life, and especially for this younger generation, like how they interact with their friends, be it through their device or in person, has just the same amount of impact on them personally, wherever the communication takes place, positive or negative. So really trying to break down not only that they're a good citizen, but they're part of a community. And if they're part of that community, a role of being in that space is how do you give back to that community? It could be responding to negative content, it could be building and creating something, it could be relationships, or even a standard of norms that this is the type of stuff that we post. And it's really important that not only adults, parents, teachers, whoever has an impact with these young people are having conversations of what is appropriate, what kind of conversations you having. I had a great conversation with my dad. First year I was teaching. It was the first year, if you remember, cell phones were out that had the keyboards. If you remember those, the Motorola NB, I think it was Motorola NB. There's you slide them up, and you're smiling. But I walk around the room, you see kids would be like texting, right? They'd be under their desk, staring at their crotch. They'd be looking in their backpack for a pencil for 15 minutes, or writing sideways in their binder. And I remember telling my dad started teaching in 1967, and I said, hey, my kids are doing this with their phones. Like, it's kind of annoying. I just don't want to tell them to put their phones away. And he starts laughing at me on the phone. I'm like, why are you laughing? He said, well, I just can't believe kids are still doing that. I'm like, doing what? He's like, getting away with stuff. Right? It's just imbuing on teenagers, like they're gonna push the system, they're gonna challenge us, they're gonna invert whatever norms we try to enforce on them. So I think the more we can have the conversation, particularly younger, and model and guide for them, and help them see what that online life is like and could be, and how they can play an active role in that, I think we're gonna see better outcomes. We're gonna see those statistics shift and change. The reality is, as dark as those numbers may sound, there's really way more good online than there is bad. We just don't always see that. And so I think the more we can talk to kids about how to respond to this, how they are building relationships, and really elevate their voice and what they are doing that is positive, we can start to see more of those stories of this is how I'm making a positive impact on my world, be it offline or online.
That's very encouraging that you say there's more good online than there is bad. So that's very encouraging. Jan, your thoughts. What is digital citizenship, and why should we care?
Well, I think digital citizenship is an opportunity for teachers, for parents, for the youth themselves to help create what Mike's explaining just is this ever-evolving thing that we're trying to get our heads around. And I don't think one person has the answer. I don't think there's a right answer. I think we get to explore this brave new world together. And the sooner we latch arms and do that, the better off for all of us. So much of being a citizen is how you approach other people in a community, and what you do when that other person approaches you, and how you are productive in your world. Well, we have just opened everybody's world, their own little community, to a universe. It's just phenomenal that they can communicate and be influenced and create and influence others, in their home. And you talked about statistics with children 3 to 5 engaging, interacting with these things. So critical to this huge, expansive world is our realization that there is an internal world, and there is this engaging with our own brains and our own mental health. Never before has it been so needed. And we, as digital citizens, are going to need reading and writing arithmetic in a new way. And literacy cannot continue to be letters on a book that I finally figure out how to pronounce and put together to form a word, but it's got to be media literacy. And our ability to access what is coming at us, to analyze it, to evaluate it, and create on our own too, media in a variety of forms, is a skill set that I just say hooray for teachers who understand that concept of media literacy and will teach it in every aspect of their teaching, to open that mindset of their students. The power is in them, and they're the ones to be deliberate with their world, what they receive and what they share, how they access it, how they analyze it. Teachers have such power to stand back, so to speak, and help them be kind of like a little voice on their shoulder, like an internal voice for their brains as they're trying to, expand to this brave new world. So that digital citizenship, I think it has got to go hand in hand with a skill set of media literacy.
Excellent. Also, so many great points you guys all mentioned. So there are 9 themes that make up digital citizenship. Let's start with the first one, digital access, full electronic participation in society. According to the U.S. Department of Education in 2015, the 2 main reasons children ages 3 to 18 lacked access to the internet at home was because it was too expensive. A main barrier for children from low-income families and for children whose parents had low levels of education. According to USA Today, the average starting price for internet is around $35, but most Americans are paying an average of $60 per month for broadband. To become productive digital citizens, we need to be committed to making sure that no one is denied digital access. How can we do better as educators, parents, who may not have the means to afford a PC or the internet? Why don't we start off with Dr. Ribble?
Yeah, we're in the midst of this, having this discussion in a one-to-one within our own district, and it's a struggle. We're not a completely low-income community, but we're finding that we have a number of students that just don't have access. And one of the things that I've had a lot of discussions with in other communities outside, I was in St. Louis a couple of months ago, and we were having the same discussion, and they said, we compiled a list of, places that had free and open access for kids to be able to go to, but what they found was that it was in restaurants and different places, and there is public libraries and other places, but do you really want to send your 7-year-old out, to the public library every single night just to be able to have internet access? So we've had discussions with our cable company in our area. We've talked to cell phone providers. They are not yet to the place of giving it away, but they are providing it at lower costs for students that do have economic needs. So we think that that's a high priority to be able to have that access inside the homes. And it's not just for the students, but also for the parents, because with it also provides them opportunities as well. Getting jobs, being able to communicate with different organizations and clients, and all kinds of different opportunities come along with it. So when we talk about access, we could go in a lot of different directions, but just the internet piece of it is a big part of that. And I've heard a lot of communities are trying to look at providing even Wi-Fi access as a community, and that's starting to bubble up in more and more places because of the costs that go with it.
Wow. Matthew, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to remember the name. And really, we just got to get creative. Looking at where kids do their homework, how they do their homework. So one of the districts I just learned about, Coachella, the school and that festival, they started putting routers on their buses, realizing that kids who have, particularly if they have a longer commute time, are doing their homework or getting tasks done in transportation to and from school. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, actually about a month ago now, in San Francisco, All Tech is Human, and we had one of the directors from the FCC was there, and I apologize, I'm blanking on the name, but she talked about how we need to get better at giving access. There are public programs, like Comcast, for example, has programs if you apply to get a free router in your house, especially if you qualify at a certain financial level. But whether or not people know that is a whole another mystery in and of itself, or even the willingness to ask that. I can tell you my experience as a teacher, my kids who don't have money make it very clear as soon as possible that they don't want anyone to know they don't have money, right? Because there's a level of shame or pride or something that goes along with that. So where we have these internet hotspots, be it in the library, be it on buses and transportation, looking at homework policies, and just looking at what programs are available. I know we're joking earlier before this started if I wouldn't get on sports, but quick shout out to Marshawn Lynch. There's a fan, yay. If not, he is a funny human being. But in Oakland, he started his own cell phone company. He's in a neighborhood where 100% of people are qualified for free and reduced, and if you're low income and you don't have a phone, it's hard to get employment. It is hard to get access to resources that can help you get employment, medical, school, family, you name it. So I think people are just getting creative, like, okay, we need this to happen. How can we make that happen? And just really looking at what is the impact that we want, how can we get it, and what is the best way to spend our money to do that. That's really, it's a policy, community-driven initiative that is taking shape around the country in different forms.
Jan, your thoughts?
Yes. Yeah, and it's not only taking shape around the country in different forms, but around the world. We do a lot of work in rural communities in Mexico with a charity that I'm a part of. And these are descendants of Mayan people. They've lived for thousands of years among the Spanish, and they still don't even know how to speak Spanish. And it's fascinating to me over the course of a decade, 2 decades, this will change like overnight. We've seen people try to bring computers, and then we see whole laboratories up in the highlands of Chiapas where the computers are all in a nice room, but they're not working because they can't get electricity. And so the students are all over in the shack freezing because of the high altitudes, but these inoperable computers are being well cared for. Yet we see kids that subsistence farmers, and they have cell phones. Their world is going to change so fast. I think what was mentioned about getting creative. I just am not worried as much about that as I am worried about this part. Really helping our kids get the mental health and the skills necessary to handle everything that's going to come at them. So you're getting my perspective more of that. I just see this as an avalanche. It'll come, we'll get it figured out, and we'll be behind the 8 ball with our kids if we don't get excited with them and say, this is powerful, there is good stuff, and how are you going to discern what that good stuff is and be a part of that as a good citizen.
Absolutely. We're going to take a shift here to digital commerce now, another theme that makes up digital citizenship. According to CNBC, Big Commerce, Business Insights, those publications state 96% of Americans have made an online purchase in their life, 80% in the past month alone. Millennials and Gen Xers spend 6 hours per week shopping online. They must have a lot of money, right? Baby boomers spend 4 hours per week shopping online. Seniors spend 2.5 hours per week shopping online. Legitimate and legal exchanges are occurring, but the buyers or sellers need to be aware of the issues associated with it. At the same time, an equal amount of goods and services which are in conflict with the laws or morals of some countries are surfacing: illegal downloading, pornography, and gambling. What do we need to know about becoming effective consumers in a new digital economy? And especially for students and teachers who are looking to buy equipment for their classrooms, students who are looking to buy books and supplies, what are some of the things they should be mindful of? Let's start with Matthew on this one.
Yeah, this one seems pretty straightforward. I think it's just where they're getting the stuff, right? It's, we talked about in the beginning, we referenced media literacy, digital literacy, and social literacy. It's what is credible online, what are the established stores, the channels, the networks, whether it's Amazon as an example, or Walmart, or I think people just need to be aware of the product, what they're getting, and how they're shopping for it. I don't know. I think it's just people are really looking for a deal. Consumers are money minded, and they just want to get the product that they want at the best price they can get from a retailer that they know and trust. I think what's more interesting about this than anything is the fact that I could look at something at Amazon and 2 hours later I get an ad on Facebook, and a week later I'll get an email saying, hey, by the way,
It's
you
a
looked
little
at
creepy.
this. Yeah.
It's definitely a little
it's like
creepy.
and then also interesting. You're just like, ooh, it's so smart. I think that's the part about being a consumer is really that awareness, that media literacy. I looked at this thing, I kind of want it, but then are there ways on the back end, or things that are happening that are sort of pushing me to think that, oh no, I really do need this, and I should look at it again. And just having that mindfulness.
Jan, your thoughts on this?
Well, I appreciate you bringing up that media literacy. As I mentioned before, I think as teachers with students, that is something to be aware that your students are spending that much time and will be online buying stuff. So if you can equip them with some processes to analyze and to, put that into perspective so that it gives them more power to know what they're doing rather than the algorithms coming back at us and saying, oh, you like that, I bet you'll like this too. Even helping them understand that and talking about their experiences in the classroom, or a mother talking about, okay, we have these options for shopping today, and we can drive down to the grocery store and we can get some soap, or let's check out the price online. Wouldn't that be wonderful for the kids to have an evaluative experience rather than, oh, we need this, let's go get it. What are our options? And why did they package it this way? Is this really a better product that we need? Is this the best use of our money? So going beyond that and asking our consumers questions. And what appealed to you about that product? So if we could give them some skills as they're doing their shopping, which they're going to do, that can help them keep things in perspective, we're really servicing them.
Absolutely.
Kind of a good way to do that. So one of my lessons I used to do, if you're all familiar with the spice, I don't even know how to say it correctly, turmeric?
Turmeric?
Right?
Turmeric, yeah.
You can research that on multiple levels, but it's what is the spice, health benefits, right? So I'll have kids do this research, and there's one factory in the world that pretty much produces all of our turmeric. And so having the different bottles, like you were saying up there, so researching online, what are different people charging, where are the different prices at, that's just kind of a good way to get them to recognize awareness very quickly. And I kind of already know the background a little bit, so for me as a teacher, it was a nice little control, but I think it's something we can expand on from there, and it's really a 15-20 minute lesson to start to realize and break those pieces down. And it's the same kind of media marketing lesson I would have done in an economics class, 15, 20 years ago.
Cool. Dr. Ribble?
Yeah, it's one of those aspects where this is part of that globalization piece, and how do we connect with so many different places, and that was some of the research that I did with this last book was really connecting in different places around the world and how they were using the technology to be able to even get their groceries, their the things that they purchase. We're moving into the holiday season, and how many people just buy all of their presents online and just have them shipped. They don't worry about wrapping them, and it's a shift from where we've been, and it's like Jan said, I don't see anything a problem with it. I think it's different. We're looking at the world through a different lens now of where we're headed. The aspect that some of the early work that when we talked about commerce and put it in as an element was some of the safety aspects of it that we need to start making sure that everyone understands that when you go out there you are putting yourself out there. You're putting your information out in the world, and we've seen some major companies. Target comes to mind, and some others that have had data loss, and that is us now. That is our persona out there, and how do we protect that as well? And that's how we've created these new 3 elemental areas that the 9 fit within is the safe, savvy, and social, and we're using that as the frame now to help educators to set where do we talk about these different areas. And we place these different pieces, and like Matt talked about, putting it into an economics discussion, and how does that fit? Because I think that's where some of the confusion for educators is, where do I put this? Where do I add these pieces? And if you have some of those already in your belt, that you could do, it makes it easier to put those in. But we need to help them to create that frame. And that's what I've heard from educators for a while is, I really want to do this, but I don't want to teach just one more class on digital citizenship. I want it embedded. I want it inside of the curriculum. And that's what we really have worked on this last go-round is, how do we embed that? We call this our digital citizenship progression chart. And I have to give a lot of shout out to Marty Park and his work on that. And it is out on our site, and it is a living, breathing document right now. It is constantly being updated. People can go out there and make changes to it. But to teach these kinds of lessons like economics of the digital world, we need to find a place where to put those into.
And what's your site address?
It's the digitalcitizenship.net. It's my main site, and there's a tab that says DC Progression Chart. You can go there. It's a free download. You can click on it. It's available right now. Go out and get it and make it your own, because we're trying to provide those resources so that teachers have a place to go and understand. We've talked about these, like I said, for multiple years about digital citizenship. It's time to move on. It's time to move to that next level, and that's where we saw it.
Does anybody else have anything you guys would like to add?
Yeah, I think one kind of thing we're glossing over on this is, with all that time online, is really looking at the shifting economy in general, right? Like, for example, now as a nonprofit executive director, owner, co-founder, I can hire a personal assistant online. If I want to edit a podcast, if I want to create something, sell something, and that's where I think there's a new level of entrepreneurial spirit that we can really be promoting in our students and their creativity, and looking at how they engage in these markets, strictly consumers or creators, or developing their own little market systems, products that they can then create, promote, and sell online. And we're seeing some of those examples coming up, that this global economy, when you start talking about an online world, really opens up opportunities for what we can do and where we can work and how we can accomplish all the things that we want to get done, or just earn a living.
Absolutely. So we're going to move on. We're shift gears here. Digital communication. There's email, there's Slack, there's text, and a slew of other ways to communicate these days. Part of being a good digital citizen is being able to communicate and being able to make appropriate decisions when faced with so many digital communication options. So how can we do better? When should we use instant messaging versus email? What are some of the things we should be mindful of? Jan?
I appreciate it when I'm in a new group or an association and we need to communicate with each other. Having people ask me, so what is your preferred method of communication? Would you rather have a text? Would you rather have an email? And I just think that's an awareness that we don't all approach our digital devices the same. They don't all have 24/7 access to us. And sometimes we need to analyze this ourselves with our own boundaries. Like, when am I going to be present for the people in the same room with me and have this be the superior part of my attention? I think it's important to remember that there is somehow the loss, and if we can teach our students this, the loss of the subtleness of our movements. um, the inflection of our voice that is lost on a text, it's lost in an email. Consequently, you get hurt. You told these horrendous statistics about bullying, about suicide, twice as likely to happen. People say something and maybe they didn't intend it to be so harsh, but it can be read and interpreted that way. So of all of these forms of communication that are digital, if we could help our young people understand some kind of etiquette here, or manners, that what is appropriate? Is it appropriate to share that somebody is really sick or there was a death in the family? Is it, do we owe it to someone who is so close to us to actually hear our voice, to actually go make a visit in person? Some of these things are just getting lost, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I just see that the confusion in this, and if we could teach them what one form of communication allowed that another one prevented or wasn't helping with, and we might know when to use that email or when to choose the text or whatever form of communication it might be. I just remember my aged mother, 89, just saying nobody ever calls anymore on the phone, and just lamenting that and thanking me for walking through the door. So that physical presence. And so as we talk about our digital world, I hope that we can keep it all one thing, but know that there are certain boundaries and positive things in each aspect.
So you're saying we should pick up the phone a little more?
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe we start asking Grandma, what is your preferred form of communication?
It's probably not Slack, I would think, but you never know. Matt, guys, you have any ideas, Matt, on this?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I remember growing up and watching like long distance commercials for Sprint. Who remembers that? It's like Christmas. Yeah. Grandma's on the phone, so just good memories. I think it's one of the lessons we do with students, and I remember my parents doing something similar. Is we'll give them scenarios, and they can call, they can text, they could not respond, or in person. And it could be you're late for work, breaking up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, asking someone to a dance. And I think these are just kind of social norms that we have fairly well established. However, we don't talk about them as much. And I remember, being a teenager, my first job, my parents talking about this, or, like I was having trouble with a job and my parents were coaching me on how to talk to my employer. So I think with young people, we just need to have that conversation. If you ask them, one of my favorite things to talk to students about is how they would respond if someone leaves them on red, right? They've seen your text message, but they're not responding. And then just having a conversation like, why, have you read that? Have you ever done that? Like, you get a text message from someone and like, I really don't know what to say. I'm gonna let this sit here for a bit. And all of a sudden your friend is ready to unfriend you because you haven't responded. So I think there's a lot of nuance to this. I like, your direct form of communication or preferred form of communication. I highly encourage teachers to survey their students and find out their preferred form of communication. But really coming back to some basic norms, like there's some things that are worth a phone call, and some things, like a personal example for me, I like calling people on their birthday. I used to do rap songs. I still kind of do that because it's just fun like that. But it's fun to get someone on the phone on a birthday. Everyone does a text, everyone does a Facebook message, but that personal touch of a call just seems to, that little bit of extra effort is just kind of a differentiator for some people on any given day.
Couldn't agree with you more. Dr. Ribble, your thoughts?
Yeah, we started to talk about communication and expanding that into collaboration and how do we interact, and a lot of the things that we talk about also is about balance. That it's not all one thing or the other, and how do we start pulling these together? How do we look at the physical world and the digital world in the same realm together, and how do we help our students and help each other to understand that. And it was interesting to watch my children as they grew up, and now they're in their 20s, but the differences that they had as far as their own communication. And they're still very much a visual communicators. They are very involved in Instagram and Snapchat and those kinds of communication models, as opposed to a text even, or something like Twitter, which is all, mostly text. So, there was a big swing for them. But one thing they had to learn, which I thought was so interesting, was when they went off to college, universities, their preferred method was email. And my children didn't really know about how to do email, because that was not something that they really were interested in, because it was pretty flat text. There was very little emojis, very little, putting the see you later, kind of idea. But it was this, here is the information that we want you to know. It's very, long and drawn out, but that's how universities do things and did things. Now, do they have Facebook pages? Do they have Instagram? Do they have those? Yeah, they have all those. But when that was important communication, it came through an email, and we had to keep reminding our kids, have you checked your email? Have you checked, especially when it came to financial aid, when it came, all of those things all came through that mode. So they had to know that that was important. Now, when it was important, that's when they went, and that's when they used it. So teaching that, as we bring our students along, that there may be a time when email is important. It may be a time when picking up the phone is important and making that call. But I'm finding with especially teenagers that they feel like calling somebody is an interruption in their life. That by texting or Instagram or Snapchat allows somebody to do something else while they're doing Snapchat. So it is this idea of multitasking and being able to do those things. And a phone call, you kind of have to be, drilled in and part of that conversation, and not so much, oh, I'm doing something else and I'm going to have a conversation. So I think we're seeing a transition. I think they're starting to learn that there are many different ways, and how do I pick and how do I choose which one is the best?
Great answers. We're running out of time, so we're going to go through a few more important topics here. Digital health and wellness. According to the National Library of Medicine, the time spent on the internet averages 734 minutes a day in America. College and university students spend approximately 16.7 hours a week on internet. And of course, you can imagine eye strain from hours of screen time can result in eye irritation, dryness, fatigue, or blurred vision. What should parents be teaching their kids about their health and digital use? Many of us are glued to Facebook, Instagram for several hours a day. We also hear stories of texting and driving crashes, people falling off of cliffs when they're trying to take selfies. I see people crossing the street looking at their phones. Should we be taking social media breaks? What should we all know about digital health and wellness? Let's start with Jan.
Well, that's an easy question, isn't it? And I think that's what, when I was suggesting that we need our students, we need our children, someone like me, to help figure this out together. This is where I need it. You've seen the classic stories of the mother trying to tell her kids to do something, but she's so busy on her phone that she can hardly even look at them. I just got home, flew on an airplane the other day, and I was thinking about this, and on either side of me, both passengers and the people in front of me had a a cell phone in their hand, the earbuds were in their ears, and they had a screen flashing images in front of them. So talk about multitasking and talking about when do you take a break from all of this or a fast from it so that your body can actually recalibrate and think and absorb what it's learning. I think just saying you can't do this doesn't work, and that's why, you know, a lot of our efforts with EPIK is empowering the kids to try to find that balance for themselves too. And they can find it better when they see parents searching and actually struggling, or their teachers struggling. So hey, I don't know, what do you think the balance is? And have not only a discussion, but then, you know, maybe try some suggestions and then come back to that and evaluate, well, what did that work? What was that like for you last night when you actually put your cell phones away and you went into the other room and slept? Was that helpful to not have interruptions? You know, but coming back and letting us be more mindful of how that is controlling us, or are we controlling it?
Good question. Good answer. Matthew, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, we do surveys. So we present about 400,000 students, and in those assemblies we've done, we'll always ask kids, like, you know, how many of you, when you're talking to your friend, they're on their phone, and hands will go up, and we'll, you know, say, how many of you are that friend, and they laugh and all put their hand up. And they'll ask them, like, how many have a parent, like, when you're talking to them, like, they put their phone down and look at you and say, what'd you say? Like, every hand goes up, and just talking just explodes. So I think there's kind of two things going on here. One is, you know, as parents, we need a model, right? When should the phone be out? When should it not be out? Being at dinner. You know, I was talking to my wife a little while ago, like, if we're out at dinner having a conversation, I kind of want my kid to be able to hear that conversation, but yet our society norm says that that kid is there and they're quiet, oh, they're being good, even though they're completely glued to that device. You know, I want my kid to see my wife and I talking, because then we then become the model of what adult communication looks like, and that's where they learn that. The second piece to this is really is where are those minutes and hours going? You know, it's not just the amount of screen time, but what are they doing with that screen time? We surveyed some students. We did an experiment with a group of kids at a high school here nearby, and we asked them who would be willing to give their phone up for a week. And honestly, the kids who really don't care about their phone or who they're connected with, they were happy to hand it over. For most of them, they really like their phone. It's how they stay in touch with their friends. It's how some of them, they'll use meditation apps. They'll do outreach, their stories, shows that they watch. They do their homework. We really need to look at not so much the quantity of minutes and hours, we need to really look at the quality, and are they creating or just consuming? Are they connecting? Is it their lifeline, or is it really just truly a distraction? And that's where I think the bigger conversation, that mindfulness and that balance conversation comes in, is what are you doing with that device, and what are you using it for?
Dr. Ribble, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's, you know, exactly what Matthew and Jan were talking about. It's all about balance. It's about, you know, when and how we're using it. I was impressed when Apple came out, one of their last iOSs, and had a tracking piece in there that you could actually see how much you're on social media and how much you're doing games, and you know, and I think that's a good tool for someone to take a look at. You know, what am I using this for? And it's not so much, you know, I don't need it. It's how am I using it? And I think we have to keep focusing that it is a tool. It isn't, you know, it isn't us. It isn't a person, but it's how we use it. It's like any other tool. We need to think about and work on how do we use that, and how is it best used for us. You know, one PE teacher was telling me about an assignment that they did was, and Jan mentioned it a little bit, was having students turn off their phone at night and see how much sleep they were getting and how they felt and all those. And this PE teacher had this student that came back after a week, and she was like, I'm never going to have my cell phone in my room again to sleep, because I get so much better sleep now because I'm not sitting worrying, am I going to get a text? Am I going to get, a snap? Am I going to get, some kind of post that I feel like I have to respond to? That they were putting it away, and their friends knew that they were putting it away. And they came to that balance of, I don't need to wake up at 2 a.m. and post something. And that was free. It was freedom for them. They were able to free themselves from having to worry about it.
All right, let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about a topic that has been in the news quite frequently, cyberbullying. In a time of political turmoil, the rise of social media, cyberbullying statistics worldwide reveal alarming facts about virtual harassment, its impact, and the many different shapes and forms it can take. According to Net Sanity, 42% of LGBT youths have experienced cyberbullying, 35% of them have received online threats, 63% of internet trolls in the US prefer to engage in political topics. Other popular subject matters are celebrities and religion, 52 and 48% respectively. Bully victims are between 2 to 9 times more likely to consider suicide than non-victims, according to studies by Yale University. So we're hearing stories all over the United States and the world about students and even adults committing suicide as a result of cyberbullying. Parents, faculty, students, we hear of digital etiquette. Where do we start on trying to fix this epidemic? Let's start with Dr. Ribble.
Well, I think we just need to allow them to have that conversation and be able to open up and be talking to parents, talking to counselors, talking to those people that are close to them. But it's it once you make that technology, that tool your life, then all that comes crashing in when people are posting things about you or saying things, and get into from cyberbullying into sexting and all of those pieces, and there's just so many aspects that our children are being bombarded with so much of this, and there's so much negativity that goes along with it, and it isn't just one person leads to another and to another, and that's where bullying typically was a one-on-one type of situation, and now people that don't even know this person are joining in, and yeah, you should kill yourself, you should do this, why are you still online, why are you doing these things, and it's just this bombardment, and they need to be able to step back and step away. But when your life becomes, how many likes do I have, how much do people approve and give us that feedback, when it comes back as negative, that's hard, because that's what I'm living for. That's what I'm trying to gather is this recognition that all of this, and when it goes the other way, it becomes something much worse. So the bullying piece, and all of us have heard all the different stories, but it's got to be finding those people to be able to say, how do I step away? How do I release myself from it?
I mean, I've never heard of such stories till, when I was growing up, I didn't hear it to this extent. I mean, it's like, it's out of control, really, what's going on online these days. I mean, fights going viral. I mean, people just killing themselves. It's really sad. Jan, what should parents or teachers do if they notice one of their kids or students have been cyberbullied?
I think it's actual, or here is living, but understanding and letting I just got a message. Your internet connection is unstable.
You're
So
back.
not only are youth unstable when they're bullied, but our internet connections are. But helping them look at this from the perspective of what's going on from both sides of the equation, what is happening to them, and how they can evaluate what is being sent to them. Important things about mental health and creating boundaries when you need to be safe, and understanding what your responsibility is in that and your power is in that too. Even giving the children the opportunity to understand what the physiological ability of their brain is, that it's a muscle, that they have a part of it that's called a prefrontal cortex that reasons and that helps them to make judgments and also to evaluate empathy, is a different part of their brain than the part that the bully is trying to incite with fear and anger. And for some reason, throughout history, we have this flight or fight sensation, and we want to jump on the bandwagon. And news sources are utilizing that to get customers. So what can incite fear in people? Oh, they'll read my article. Helping kids understand that everything is going to have a bias. Every story. We're not representing reality. We are representing reality from our point of view. And as a good citizen, I want to contribute to a healthy community. Maybe not everybody is likewise. You know, you got robbers out there. You got bank robbers and drug pushers, and so we have to realize that even on the internet, when we don't feel any harm, there are these real harms coming to us. So, you know, opening it up to some of these discussions with our kids to see that this is complex and this is layered, and it's not just don't do this or do this, but try to give them some skill sets and some understanding of what's happening, what's motivating some of the ire that is coming their way, and that they have the power to step away. They have the responsibility to create boundaries, but then also how to respond or not respond if they need time, and understanding that it's okay to find time and to talk with trusted people that you believe really care about you, to try to find solutions about these things, and ask them, what do you think your next step is?
And Matthew,
Get a chance to practice these skills and see what sinks in, and compliment them and praise them for their efforts in that skill building. Recognize their efforts and the character that's developing in them.
Thank you, Jan. And Matthew, what can you do to cope if you yourself are the victim of bullying? Because I think that's really important. You know, you read your comments online, you're being bullied. Some people really don't have the strength to handle it. We've seen cases where, you know, students are committing suicide. So if you yourself are put in that situation, what should you do? How do you cope?
There's several things going on there. I mean, one is looking at, you know, mental health and social media, right? There's correlational, not causal data. I think we need to be mindful of that. There's way more going on here than just negative comments that are happening online. Two is, you know, like we got started when students made a fake Facebook page about a teacher. Over 1,000 followers, was up for 2 weeks before a student finally turned the person in. A year later, someone made a fake Instagram page about the same teacher. We had 30 students go online and comment in support of the teacher. The page was down in less than 45 minutes. Right? Because students not only knew what to do, they knew how to respond, and they knew that it was a very supportive community. And so I think about, you know, back to being part of the community. When you see this negative speech, how do you respond to it? That gets super complicated, because then you have to deal with, oh, if I speak up, now am I going to become a target?
Right.
I think kids are naturally aware of that. From the industry perspective, talking to several content moderation groups and several of the tech companies, only about 18% of people actually click that report button when something negative happens online. That's really low. And so we need to have better conversations about, A, if something is there, do you report it? Most young people tell us they don't, because if someone's talking about them, they want to see what they're saying rather than report it or block that person knowing that someone's talking about them and they can't see it. Two, then how do you overcome that awkward social situation as a bystander? How do I respond to it? How do I reach out? Is it text? Is it email? Is it in person? You know, how do I support the victim? How do I respond to the bully? If I know the bully, can I tell him? And then it's just that resilience. Talking with Providence St. Joseph Health, their lead behavioral psychologist, Dr. Robin Henderson, she brought up a point of the Boys and Girls Club study from the late 60s, right? It's one caring adult. If you have one caring adult in a young person's life, they're more likely to succeed and graduate high school, on and on. And those relationships are becoming tougher because of where they're taking place. And kids, young people, adults are searching for their identity, and it's really happening in different forums. So if you don't have that strong sense of self, I think you're right. Some of these comments can have a very negative impact on us as humans when our brains are so heavily wired to focus on the negative. It's that survival, flight or flight that you were talking about. So I think if we could talk, when it comes to mental health, talking about self-care, talking about who we engage with on these communities and how we choose to engage with them, how to be supportive of each other, to speak up, positive comments. It's really going to depend on the individual. They may want to take a complete break from social. They may be looking for a friend to reach out and comment, or may just be, one of our kids, you mentioned, when I'm having a bad day, I have this meme account on Instagram that I follow. I just go in and do these very ridiculous pictures, it makes me laugh, I feel better. So I think there's a lot of ways to kind of approach that, but also just the ability to speak up, and for us to speak up and say, this isn't okay, we need to do something about it.
Excellent. We're like out of time, but I definitely want to just touch two more topics here because I think they're important. Let's talk about politics and freedom of speech. Digital citizens have the right to privacy. They have the right to free speech. But how far is too far? Political tensions have reached an all-time high in this country. Cancel culture is becoming ever more prevalent. And according to a study by Pew Research, nearly 20% of social media users have blocked, unfriended, or hidden someone because of their political posts online. Have we no tolerance anymore for differences of opinions? Is it possible to be respectful and open to differences of opinions? Your thought, Dr. Ribble.
Well, I think, it's not that we're not open to it, but we tend to go to some of the most basis levels sometimes, and it becomes more name calling as opposed to how do we work towards, solutions. And I think that's what we really need to use these tools for, is how do we come together? How do we, communicate and collaborate as a community to bring these, bring ourselves together? And the comments and the things that are, it's more just like, out on the playground name calling, and I see that in my my own extended family, that certain people have very strong opinions, be it religion or politics or whatever it is, and that others just they don't want to hear it, and so they just turn it off and say enough. And there are some that are fairly strong-willed and are willing to say something. And I happened to there was a situation that my son had a Facebook page, and he was in high school at the time, and one of his friends actually had used an inappropriate word online, and so his grandmother, my mother-in-law, put stated you really shouldn't have this on your page, and my son unfriended his grandmother. So
Oh my God.
Thanksgiving this month, next year. So I've seen it happen, and it's sad that we go to that level, but I think it's how can we come together, and that's my hope, is that we can use those. And it's like Jan said, there's all kinds of people out there. There's good people, there's bad people, and we just have to try to work together to come to a common end.
Jan, is it considered digitally, or you're acting correct if you find out that one of your friends is a Trump supporter? Is it digital etiquette to just delete them off of Facebook?
Well, I guess that would depend on your point of view, if you were or were not a Trump supporter. Yeah, we have reached new levels of poor example for our children in our political dialogue these days. And it's pretty sad. But it's extremely sad. As I dabbled in politics myself, and have seen the town hall meetings go from yelling, a current representative just yelling at the people and then yelling back, to my own experience with facilitating collective impact type meetings where we actually discuss a topic. And I know that this can happen when people get together and there are ground rules, that there is structure to how we're going to participate with each other, and that there is going to be respect, or somebody mentioned the word tolerance, to listening to someone's point of view, and maybe even not just their point of view, but the story that informed that point of view. So if we get to know each other as real people first, and real individuals, and let them represent themselves rather than us making up, you know, why they feel the way they do, but hearing them out, it does so much to give us the ability to talk politics. I think it's really pathetic that in our churches or wherever that we feel like these are untouchable topics, that religion, that politics is something that can't be discussed. And I think it's part of the mental health issue that we all need to deal with and figure out how to work on. But I know that there are techniques out there. I've been involved with them myself as we did work on EPIK Deliberate Digital and bringing a huge stakeholder community together with very different views. I know that people can build allies and they can find win-win situations, even though they have different points of view, that continue to protect their right to have their point of view, but there is an etiquette and there is a way to treat other people with dignity as we try to understand what that point of view is and where we can agree and disagree and where we might find common ground.
I think that's so important. And Matthew, as educators, what should we be teaching our students about etiquette when it comes to discussing politics or other controversial issues?
And just being informed, right? One of the things we hear a lot from young people, especially if they get caught saying something like, well, I have freedom of speech. Like, yeah, you have freedom of speech. You don't have freedom of consequence. And really being mindful of how they approach this issue. I really love, I don't know if anyone's Catholic or not, it's not really the point of the story, but the Jesuits have a great way of approaching problem solving. And I'm kind of blanking on the name, but it's when you let go of your principle and descend into the particulars. And it's, you know, it's almost like a Stoic approach to problem solving. I think with young people is really how do we have these conversations? Because especially for politics, so many kids, they tend to echo or parrot whatever their parents say. Especially in high schools, they're trying to understand all this. But as they start to develop their ideas, I think as they share them, I support this candidate, or I believe in this principle, is really looking at not identifying, labeling, or categorizing people based upon those beliefs. That's right. Like if I believe in this one topic, then everything good or bad about that topic or the candidate associated with that topic just got ascribed to me. And no, that's not the case. Like this is what I want to argue on this piece. So really kind of stepping away from our emotional reaction. You know, an example of this would be when you see an article or clickbait on, Facebook, Twitter, wherever, do people read the article or do they read the headline and respond? Did they read the other comments before they responded? And just being very informed in your approach and really trying to understand what the other person meant by this. I think it's a very Stoic belief. But I think in schools, as teachers, our obligation is to create that safe space to have that conversation, have those expectations ahead of time, and really dive into the particulars and look at the problem we're trying to solve, more so than the people, feelings, or emotions that are connected to it.
Thank you, Matthew. I want to jump into our last topic of the evening, your digital footprint. While you're a digital citizen and may have the right to privacy and free speech, that isn't always the case. 60% of connected devices don't provide proper information on how they collect, use, or disclose users' personal information. Your thought on that, Jan?
I'm going to just pass on that. I'm going to let that to the experts.
All right, Dr. Ribble?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about footprint. I heard multiple years ago, at a ISTE conference, he even sort of expanded that idea as a footprint as a digital tattoo, and I like the imagery of the digital tattoo because it is so deliberate. You know, you're making those decisions, and it is pretty permanent that, you know, when you put that information out there, and our students need to understand that piece is, you know, that what they put out there, you know, it lives on, and you want the best view of yourself out in the world. And I had somebody that was talking about a story that they were teaching freshmen in college, and they were talking about digital footprint at the time, and they were you know, discussing it, and you know, they had a conversation, and then as the students were all leaving, this young woman, she would have been a freshman in college, comes up to the professor and says, I did a search on myself, and the first thing that came up was a semi-nude picture that I had taken when I was 14 years old, and that was her footprint. And she went to the professor and was just crying and just saying, you know, what can I do about this? And the thing, you know, the issue is that, you know, that information gets shared and copied and moved and all of those kinds of things. And you know, California's tried, and the EU has tried. You know, this idea of being able to forget, you know, once you reach 18, because you know you haven't developed your brain, and you know, all of the, you know, the research that goes with it. But you know, there's a lot of good stuff that could be out there too. And if we could show our students as they come up, you know, if they could share that good stuff out in the world, that lives on as well, and that's what you can help to show potential employers, to show higher education, to show, you know, all kinds of different people who you are and what you are. So, you know, the footprint can swing both ways, but we need to know that it's out there. And you know, people say, you know, the internet is forever, and a lot of it is, but what do we want to show of ourselves? And that's what I think of when I think of footprint, is how do I show the best person that I am out in the world?
And when we were talking about politics, you know, some people can write pretty outrageous political statements online. Matthew, your thoughts on digital footprints?
Yeah, I think it's just looking at where and how our data is being used. We have Face ID on our phones, thumbprints, a lot of Face ID for certain apps, passwords. You look at baby records, a lot of those are online now. My 5-year-old, I wish I could say how I knew, but you know, he knows I'm taking his picture, and he now wants to bet every single photo I post online. And he'll look and be like, I don't like that one, take it down. And I'm like, you're a very serious 5-year-old. That's a lot to say for someone who won't clean their room. So it's just fascinating to me to see. I think for me, like my conversation with my kids is like, if someone takes your picture and they're gonna post online, like I want you to be aware of that. And I think that's where we're at, is what is the stuff that's going out there, who's sharing it, who has access to it, how is that data being used. You know, we talk of, you know, I'm digressing a little bit, but artificial intelligence, there's so much data out there, and we have to be so smart at how we look at it. I think just knowing we have a footprint is sort of the first step of thinking about what could be there. Googling yourself is like a very simple thing to do, but just being aware of what is out there, how it's being used, what we're sharing, who we are sharing it with, when we're sharing it, and being aware that it's okay to be private on certain things. I think the other aspect of this is just this culture of shame that's developed over the past few years. This idea that, you know, apparently humans aren't allowed to be fallible. And that if we can find someone who did something that we disagree with, be it politically or otherwise, you know, we're seeing this culture shift of really trying to, you know, put people in their place. It's like the Scarlet Letter 21st Century Edition, to where we're going to put you on blast online because we think you did something terrible and the world needs to know and do something about it.
Lose your job.
Just today in the news, Major League Umpire tweeted something about, you know, Trump and impeachment and something else, and he eventually deleted the tweet and deactivated his account, but it wasn't before someone got a screenshot and people were just going after him saying, oh, this person needs to be fired. It doesn't matter what they've done at this point, they did this one bad thing, we're going to get him, it's horrible, it's terrible. And it's, you know, again, how do we step back and look at the situation as a whole and realize, like, what is the appropriate consequence for this action that just happened right here?
Excellent. Well, you guys stayed 30 minutes over, so we really appreciate that. Before we before we go, I want to give you guys a final opportunity to speak. What is one thing you hope each of us watching can take away from tonight's discussion? Let's start with Jan.
When I was a college freshman, a professor said something in a class that stayed with me for 40 years.
Wow.
He explained to me that the greeting cards that I might buy in the grocery store or in the drugstore with the wonderful sentiments were crafted by somebody else that did not have a lived experience, that did not know my mother. And so my Mother's Day message would actually be more meaningful to my mother. Just that knowledge that, hey, I have power, even though that's fancy and it's professionally produced. I was all of a sudden becoming literate of my own ability to create and produce and to analyze what others had done. I hadn't thought that those phrases were trite before, but all of a sudden I just looked at it with new eyes, and I've never bought a Mother's Day card with a pre-written sentiment in it. And you might like them, and they may be just fine for you, but for me, as an English major, I thought, well, by gum, I can do that. That's one thing I've learned. But that power to understand our ability as media literate people in a digital age, when so much is coming at us, what is the tool set we're going to give our kids? So for the next 40 years, they can make a judgment, they can create something with the power that's in them to affect others for good. But just some kind of sense, like what message was that they were sending to me, and how did they package it so that it looked so appealing to me? What are they really trying to sell, and are they really trying to influence my values with their values? If we as teachers and as society, as parents, can work together to analyze the media that we're seeing around us and to talk about it with our kids, to give them the chance to become better consumers and producers. That's what I'd like to share.
Well said, Jan.
comments.
Well said. Dr. Ribble, your turn.
Just that the next few years are going to be some exciting times as far as how we look at technology and where it's going to take us as we start to expand into things like the Internet of Things and what that's going to look like, and how we're going to react and act with those tools. I think is just highly critical. But I've always contended, as Jan said, we need to build bridges today of where we want to go into the future. And we started that conversation back in 02, 03. We need to get this word out, and we need to share that today, because what we do today affects the children of tomorrow. Because as the parents of today, that's what they share with their children. And if it's, I'm going to stare at my screen and not pay attention to you, that's the message that they're going to get. And if it's, how can I balance, how can I utilize the tools, the technology responsibly and appropriately, that's what they will take with them as well. So they see what we do, they watch what we do. We need to help them to see what they can do in the future and what they want to be and how they can get there. And I'm so glad that there's so many resources out today. I have to give a quick plug to DigCitCommit. If you go to digcitcommit.org, it's a brand new push supported by ISTE, talking about this idea. Was a sort of brainchild of the CEO of ISTE, and it's got a lot of big names behind it, and just want to support it and get the word out.
Thank you very much. Matthew, you're up.
Yeah, I think it's reading, it's being informed, and it's adjusting with everything. You know, a lot of you mentioned ISTE. I've been reading Digital Citizenship and Action. Kristen Matson just came out. Huge fan of Spark Change with Olivia and her mom Cynthia, so mother-daughter combo. LiveBits is incredibly fun on Twitter. I just got him excited to read Sean Herman's Screen Captured out of Canada. There's a book coming out of Australia I'm excited about called Control Shift, which I think is a play on words, and it's really just about youth agency. And one of the things that we're really big on is how do we create a platform to really elevate students up and let them share their story. That's where a lot of this hope and change is going to come from. We started Digital for Good a few years ago, and really our whole point about that was how do we do a better job of telling stories of projects created by youth to solve a lot of these problems that we're facing. And then how do we, within the framework of telling those stories, connect industry and young people and educators and medical professionals and really everyone who's going to have an influence on how we improve all of this stuff together collectively. It really does take all of us. And so the Digital for Good is kind of that framework of bringing everyone together, common solution. And so many of these, what I love about Digital for Good here is seeing young people create solutions to problems all across the U.S. that are very, geo-specific. It's at their school, it's in their community, it's not happening in their framework anywhere else. And they're like, hey, here's a problem, I want to solve it. And then let's elevate and let's celebrate that. That's such a huge component of that.
All right. Well, that concludes this panel presentation. I really want to thank you guys for staying extra, and special thanks to our guests tonight, Matthew Soeth, Dr. Mike Ribble, and Jan Garbett. Thank you guys so much for your insights. We really appreciate it. And thanks to those who showed up here and are watching at home. We will make this recording available on our website and on YouTube. To learn more about tonight's panel presentation, including simple ways teachers can teach digital citizenship, visit our website, cet.depaul.edu. From all of us at the CET, I'm James Valles. We thank you. Good night.